We've talked before about some of the things that governments have done to their own people, the 60 scoop, and requiring the poisoning of industrial alcohol. Today we'll talk about governments targeting people for their sexuality. Let's look at some key stats, and here we are only dealing with consensual activity between adults. 65 countries in the world criminalize same sex sexual activity between men. Nearly half of those are Commonwealth countries. 41 countries criminalize same sex sexual activity between women. In many other countries, even when there is no law criminalizing lesbian or bisexual sexual activity, these women have been subject to arrest. 12 countries impose a death penalty on same sex sexual activity. 6 countries have fully implemented the death penalty: Iran, northern Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, and Yemen. The death penalty is a legal possibility in Afghanistan, Brunei, Mauritania, Pakistan, Qatar, the UAE, and Uganda. 14 countries criminalize gender identity expression of transgendered people. In Canada, a number of laws that targeted gay men under the criminal law were repealed in the 1960s, then more in the 1980s, many more in the 1990s. The Supreme Court came down and said, yo, if it discriminates against a person based on their sexuality, it can't be enforced. You will get no help from us. Well, they used really different words, very formal and legal language, but that was the general meaning of a number of cases that tried to test laws that were discriminatory. That's not to say that Canada suddenly became the hallmark of equality. Same-sex marriage took a while, but is legal now, and just last year Canada finally sat down, took a look at the criminal code, and got rid of all of the unenforceable discriminatory laws that were contained in it. They freshened it up so that it complied with the idea that the state really should stay out of the bedrooms of the nation. As one of our prime ministers once said, Canada's downstairs neighbor, though, has spent the last several years rolling back the rights of LGBTQ plus people, trying to force them back into the closet, trying hard to remove protections that used to mean that employers could not discriminate against them and that they could make proper medical decisions for themselves that really should be between them and their doctors, and generally making life more dangerous again. We're not here to review the 200 plus laws that are making their way through America's lawmaking bodies today. For today, we'll leave that to the extremely knowledgeable and capable advocates who are working on it. So today we're here to talk about the Genovese crime family, a business they owned, a bunch of foolish laws, and how, when it all collided, it changed everything. Y'all may have heard of it because it's referenced a lot these days, but how many know what happened at the Stonewall Inn? How many of you all knew what it meant, knew that it was the mob, for profit of course, that gave gay men a place to dance and be safe from police raids? Let's get into it. As Sophia would say, picture it. It was 1966 near Greenwich Village. 3 men would turn a restaurant and nightclub into a gay bar for the grand sum of $3,500. Those 3 men, Genovese mafioso. In fact, virtually none of the gay bars in Greenwich Village were owned by the LGBTQ plus community. They were almost all owned by organized crime goons. Why? Well, the community wasn't going to complain about the watered down booze. They weren't treated well by police, so they weren't likely to go there to complain when the good booze went out the back door to be sold in the black market, or about the drug sales. The community wasn't even going to complain about the excessive price they were charged for those watered down drinks, or about how they weren't treated with the warmest of welcomes, or the greatest care. They did appreciate, though, that the Mafia was paying off police, and so the Mafia-controlled gay clubs weren't being raided very often, if at all. Back then, police would raid gay clubs and bathhouses because they could. Sodomy was illegal, they would say, and they would repeat that to justify the raids as if things were just going down all over the club floor and all over the bar tops. The law also prohibited dancing in most places that sold alcohol. At first, that law was a holdover from post-prohibition times. Can't have people drink alcohol and dance. That would just be way too much. People would be all clutching their pearls. Then the law was applied to prevent cabarets, which drew gay people because, hello, who doesn't love a drink, bit of dinner, and a show? The Mafia controlled gay clubs, not ideal. Let gay people be gay people without being raided. Who cared less for what the law said, so long as they could make money? Well, the Mafia, that's who. Anyway, back to Stonewall. Stonewall was a favorite among all the gay bars because, unlike most of them, when Stonewall was converted from a restaurant, it had a dance floor and dancing was allowed. It had no liquor license, but liquor was sold anyway. There was no running water behind the bar, but they just sort of rinsed the glasses in tubs of water and reused them. There weren't any fire exits either, but the city inspector wasn't going to stop by and complain. The toilets were a damn mess, overflowing or running water constantly. Well, so what? The health inspector wasn't coming by. The police weren't coming by either, except once a week to collect a very fat envelope of cash. That became known as payola. Payola was like raid repellent. To make sure no undercovers showed up, a door with a peephole was the only way in. The bouncer would look out at you and make sure you were 18 and you seemed gay. Technically, you were supposed to sign in because it was registered as a private club, but most people never did. If the cops happened to show up, the colored lights would be turned off and white ones turned on. That gave everyone time to stop touching or dancing so that they had less chance of being caught up by police. That's not to say things were all good between the Mafia and their clients. It was the Mafia after all. Wealthier visitors to Stonewall would find themselves blackmailed and extorted, lest some mafioso out the target to their employers or to the public in general. Police who were taking bribes began to realize that the Genovese partners that they were working with were making way more money in extortion than they made in liquor sales, and the police weren't getting their cut of that business. Oh my God, how dare they? In June 1969, they planned to shut the whole thing down permanently. They started with shutting down 4 other clubs in the village, including the Checkerboard and the Telestar, both popular clubs. They raided them and shut them down. On June 28, 1969, 4 undercover cops enter. They gather up some evidence and then they call for backup from the 6th precinct and they signal the Public Morals Squad. Yeah, there was a Public Morals Squad who were waiting outside. At 1:20 a.m., police raided in full force. There were a little more than 200 people inside the bar, by most estimates. This night, the raid would not go the way the authoritarian Mafia-partnered police officers planned. Oh, no, it did not. Usually, what would happen, police would line people up and check their IDs. They would arrest anyone without an ID or anyone who dared to dress like a female who was biologically male. A female officer would take those folks into a bathroom to be checked. That's right, I said that. They would physically be checked to determine what kind of genitals they had. The 60s, right? Jesus. That night, though, the folks dressed as women refused to go into the bathrooms. The others refused to produce IDs, and police would say, "Fine, you're all going to jail." They sexually assaulted a number of women while claiming it was frisking. Well, groping a breast is not frisking. It was so beyond a frisk. The police were going to take all the booze as well. They let a few people go, but those people stayed behind instead, and they would attract a large crowd. This night, the patrons and the village residents were not going to make this foolish raid easy for anyone. At first, things were just about jeering and booing the cops. Then Storm Delarvery, uh, she gets clubbed in the head by police after escaping them 4 times and resisting their efforts to arrest her. The crowd decidedly turned on police when she gets clubbed in the head. No one was going to have it anymore. At first, it was coins mocking police payoffs that were thrown. And soon it was bottles, garbage cans, garbage, rocks, bricks at the cops and at the windows of the Stonewall. Parking meter was even uprooted and used to try to batter open the doors of the inn, where a few police had barricaded themselves inside with some of the patrons. Someone threw a garbage can that was on fire through a window, and someone else squirted lighter fluid into the bar. The whole thing lasted about 45 minutes. There was a jail nearby, and the inmates began to set their belongings on fire and toss them into the street. And the whole time they were chanting, "Gay rights, gay rights, gay rights," over and over again. It was bedlam. The cops were humiliated, and the patrol force arrived. Cops do not like being humiliated. They've been forced into retreat by, oh my God, gay men and women. A few had bruises, and one had a cut near his eye, and that just enraged all of them. Police rounded up everyone they could and put them into patrol wagons. The transvestites, who the police had become so used to bullying, fought furiously, including Marsha P. Johnson, against being tossed into the paddy wagons. And somewhere in the crowd, a chorus line formed, just to add to the mocking of the overhanded police tactics, while the chorus line was beaten with nightsticks. Johnson, along with Zazunova and Jackie Harmona, became the leaders of the group, which began with no leaders at all, just anger at the way people in a gay bar were being treated. People would be chased down one street by police only to reemerge on the same streets the police were trying to clear. Chunks of the crowd would charge and chase the police. The rioting would continue then for 6 nights. And in the end, gay advocacy found its place in New York. It was clear to everyone, absolutely everyone, that no one was going to stand for police brutality anymore. No one was going to stand for the corruption anymore. No one was going to be shaken down or extorted. And a place would be carved out for the safety and community of the LGBTQ plus in the city. The very next year, on the anniversary of the raid on Stonewall, the first American gay pride marches began in New York City and Los Angeles and Chicago. The next year, pride marches spread to Boston, Dallas, and Milwaukee, and as far away as London, Paris, Stockholm, and West Berlin. The tide had surely shifted. It was probably going to shift anyway. But when the law and police decided to target people who were just trying to be who they were, and a corrupt police force decided to take their beef, one they had with the Mafia, out on them, well, that spread the changing of the tide pretty damn quick. And the lesson for lawmakers and authorities should be, just leave people alone to be who they are. Eventually, always, oppression turns on the oppressor. If you're enjoying these videos and want more, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any videos. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.